You only need a few things to make a t-shirt jump rope. You need some t-shirt yarn, and here I have chosen 3 colors that I hope will show up well in the video. You need a couple of clothespins, and that's just about it. You notice my t-shirt yarns have rubber bands. These are number 64 rubber bands I get at the Dollar Tree. It's important to have 3 rubber bands for the 3 colors of yarn. You can start by cutting these into lengths of t-shirt yarn and then rolling each one up into a ball. I find that I braid tightly, and most directions will say to cut 10 feet of t-shirt yarn to end up with 7 to 8 foot. It takes about 12 feet of t-shirt yarn for me to get about an 8-foot jump rope. So what I have found lately is I just go ahead and use the rolls and measure the braid until it gets to the length that I want, and then I end it. Jump ropes are sized, and I'll show you this chart. They're sized by height. So if you're making them for children, they generally say 7 foot, but older children perhaps need the 8 foot. And then, of course, if you have very tall children, they would need the 9 foot. So since I'm going to leave my t-shirt yarn uncut, I'm going to open each one to get a strip approximately 20 inches long. Hold the 3 ends together and line them up. You notice this has this funky little stretchy piece. I'm just going to take my scissors and cut these off so they are fairly even to start with. So I'm going to tie a knot, just an overhand knot, leaving about 4 to 6 inches of this t-shirt yarn on the end. That's actually longer than I usually leave, and I often tie 2 knots on top of each other so that it forms one big knot, and then I pull these to be sure that knot is as tight as can be. And so you see I end up with about a 4-inch strip on the other end. I have a loop that I have attached to a wooden rocker. And so you need this loop or something to attach this braid to keep tension while you braid. Some people braid standing up, and so they use a doorway and they hook an eye bolt to it. Some people sit and hook this to their big toe and they braid up toward their upper body. I can't do that. But this is what the clothespin is for, is to take and put this knot near this loop when I start, and then clothespin it to stay in place. As I braid, I will actually put the braid through the loop and pull it through and then clothespin it at that point. So I'm ready to start. It's important that the yarn that you have is in balls with rubber bands. I have never seen a video that says to do that. They will simply say to periodically stop and untangle the yarn that you haven't used yet. Oh, whoa, that is really bad. It is every 2 or 3 braids, it is way tangled. And they just kind of show their hands sweeping it into order. And that does not happen for me. But I have found if I leave my yarn in balls, even if I've cut it to 12-foot lengths and then rolled them up, the weight of these balls dangling keep them untangled fairly well. So that's why I do that. And I'll try later in the video to show the actual yarn dangling as I braid. But here we are, just get started. All you have to do is have some tension on this braid and then start braiding. I use a 3-strand and I overhand. So if you don't know how to braid, you'll have to learn how to do that. But basically I take my right hand over the middle, which then the middle becomes into my right hand. Then I take my left hand over the middle, which now makes the middle in my left hand. Then the right hand over the middle and the left hand over the middle. The right hand over the middle, the left hand over the middle. And you notice you start to get this braid. So I'm going to braid for a minute. And very quickly you will see your jump rope begin to form. Now when this gets too low for me to comfortably be braiding at, I take my second clothespin and clip it where I've finished braiding. I don't want to lose those. Then I unclip the clothespin at the loop. I thread this through that loop, and then I reattach it to that loop. There are many other ways you can actually attach this for tension. You decide what works best for you. This works really well for me. And then I unclip at the point where I ended braiding, and I continue. When you start again, make sure that your braid is flat and in the direction that you were going. It's easy to get it twisted upside down, but you will notice the over doesn't seem to fit, and that just means flip your braid over. And that's easy to get confused when you're starting again after a stopping point. Okay, I'm almost coming to a seam in the t-shirt, and I want to show you what I do then. So I'm going to loop this higher. You see here is a seam in this t-shirt yarn. So when I get there, I'm going to try to tuck that into the middle. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes it has a mind of its own, but that's what I'm going to attempt to do. You notice also these balls are getting shorter, so I'm going to lengthen these. Okay, I'm going to continue braiding. And I'm right at the spot where that seam is. So I'm just going to stop and kind of manually roll it. And then work hard at pressing that to the inside. And I did really well. Sometimes it just sits there and the seam shows. And that's what I have said. For functionality, I have a prototype out to get hard use and make sure that even though it doesn't look as nice as if you could get that little knot tucked in, functionality is fine. Okay, I'm going to try to arrange my camera so that you can see the actual way the balls react as I braid. I'm going to get a little bit of length here. Okay, I'm going to show you both the wrist action that helps the balls stay untangled, and then the action of the balls so you can see how nicely they stay in place when they're rolled up. So here I am, I'm braiding again. The best braid is to kind of give a little swing as you braid. And as you're doing that, the balls at the bottom are doing a pendulum effect, and they stay untangled much nicer than if you're passively braiding. So you notice this little wrist action. I'm just flinging it a little bit as I braid, which is probably why I braid tighter. I'm going to change this camera so you can see those balls bouncing at the bottom. Notice how the balls do their own untangling act as I give that little jolt. I will try to braid passively, and and the balls still help it stay untangled. If you leave these in strips, you will notice right away that you want these rubber bands tying these into balls. You want to be sure your balls are never long enough to touch the ground. That eliminates that swing action, and you'll get tangles again. Sometimes I do wear those quilting gloves when I braid, and I do it for one of two reasons. Either my fingernails are cutting my hand, so as I braid, my fingernails are cutting the other hand, or this part of my thumb is getting sore from the rubber band action. And so when that happens, I'll put a glove on and let it heal a little bit. When my jump rope measures the length that I want it, this one is about 8 feet at this point. Here's where my braid ended, and I'm going to cut about 6 to 8 inches down. And then I tie those 2 overhand knots as I did in the beginning. These balls are ready for another jump rope. You notice the orange is too small to make an entire jump rope. I can just tell by the size of that ball. But I do piece these together. And so I can show that in another video if you'd like. But I don't waste any of my t-shirt yarn. Tie my overhand knot. Pull those strings. I like to run my hand over it like I did when I was pulling yarn. Just kind of smooth out any bumps you might have. And there you have it, finished jump rope. If you're packing in shoe boxes or even just storage, this is about a 6-inch length and rubber banded, but with those number 64 rubber bands on both ends. And although it's hard to tell perspective, it makes a very small packing footprint. I'll show you against my Diet Pepsi can. Not bad at all.